Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Black Business Alliance Journey to Success podcast. I am thrilled today to be here with Marjorie McAllister from Restoring Broken Vessels. And Marjorie, welcome.
Welcome, Emily. Thank you so much for having me.
I know it's funny that we're talking as if we don't know each other because Marjorie and I work together at the Black Business Alliance.
Yes.
Marjorie, just for a second, tell us a little bit about your role at the Black Business Alliance.
Well, I am one of the business outreach specialists at the BEA, and if someone really asks me in a nutshell, what do I do? Well, I'm the frontline. I'm the person who takes the temperatures and do everything and then send you on to the doctor. So that's basically what I do. I capture your information and then send you on to the TA team. In a nutshell.
Almost like being in the ER, right?
Yes.
That's the first person
ER.
who does the initial assessment and brings the person into the organization. So thank you for that. You've been doing great work in that. But while we're here today, I wanted to be able to spend some time really talking about your business or your nonprofit, which is Restoring Broken Vessels. And I think one of the things that makes BBA really unique is that everybody on our team has their own business or nonprofit active at the moment. They are doing the work. So our hands are in the work. We know what it's like in the field because we are business owners and entrepreneurs ourselves. So tell me about Restoring Broken Vessels. And I know everybody has a story. Generally, especially if somebody's starting a nonprofit, there's something that really angers you in this world or an experience that you've had that has in your heart tugged to say, I need to do something about this. So tell me, what was your story behind starting Restoring Broken Vessels?
Well, the story behind me starting Restoring Broken Vessels is I developed, I believe the first time I heard this saying was via TD Jakes' righteous indignation, when something occurred in your life that really pushed you to say, I'm not going to allow this to happen to other people because it happened to me. So that was my righteous indignation. My Restoring Broken Vessels journey began when I was 14 years old, and I was molested, sexually abused at the age of 14, and then when I was 16 it happened again. I became angry and just so calculating and hateful. I really did spiteful because I didn't know how to deal with it. And so as I journeyed through life, I got older, there was just something on the inside of me saying, you gotta protect other people, you gotta protect other women from this happening. Didn't know how. But the best way to go through and be an example or someone that can change a situation if you yourself needs to be the change. So as I journeyed through life, every time I'd hear about a situation or perhaps see it, this righteous indignation just rose up in me. And so I realized this must be my calling or my purpose. Wasn't quite sure. Got to my 30s, got to my 40s, and then boom, it hit again. But this time I thought to myself, it happened 14 and it happened 16. Why in your 40s? By now you should have been more seasoned and be more aware. But this is not normally the case. Stuff happens. And someone and I were talking today, earlier this morning, and I'm saying, well, it will never happen to me again. But the person said to me, well, the trigger points are there, and then if you don't deal with it, it might happen again. But I'm at a place in my life right now, but for the grace of God, that I'm really standing, because when these things occurred, I tried to commit suicide. The Lord would not let me to do it because I was looking at the here and now. He was looking at the future, how I could be instrumental to bring change to these women. How could I be instrumental? I had no one to really go to talk about what happened to me. And of course, me in my infancy stage of my mind, I was 16. The first one I didn't say anything to anyone, but 16, I was in high school, just about to leave high school. And so the only way, let me go back. My parents began to wonder, what's wrong with this girl? Because I would just yell and scream and throw stuff. Don't come near me, I'll throw stuff, right? My father one day actually said, this girl has a demon, something's wrong with her. But it's because that the rage was inside of me. I could not speak about it, I couldn't tell anyone. So back to what I was saying, I went to school and supposedly told my best girlfriend The next thing I heard, it was all over, because I come from a small town in Jamaica. The whole place heard about it. I was walking in the street, people was like looking at me, calling me names and all of that. That's when I decided I was going to end my life.
So hold on one second, because I feel like we're moving really quickly.
We are.
And I do not want to just move past some things, because you said some things that are really important and powerful. First of all, I want to say that I am sorry that you've had these experiences, horrific experiences, that nobody should have to experience. And I had a wise coach who used to say, you're turning a mess into your mission. and that's what I see happening, like you're turning that mess into your mission. But in order to get to the mission point, which is starting restoring broken vessels, you've had to go through that journey. We're talking about journey to success, right? You've had to go through a journey of dealing with sexual abuse and that hurt and that anger. I want you to slow down for a second, because there may be somebody listening who needs to hear this today. What was the impact on you? You've talked a little bit about the anger. What else did you see, feel, hear, in yourself as you were dealing with it, 14, 16? What was the impact?
Well, I could say the greatest impact was I began to second guess people, whether men or women, because of what happened to me. I started building this, I'd say, a rapport in my mind that I don't want to trust anyone. I don't know if I can trust anyone, because the people that I should trust, the people who were supposed to be protecting me, they're the ones who took advantage of me, and I had no one to go to. So, I got saved at an early age when I was 11 years old. And as a pastor, my dad was a pastor. As a pastor, we were expected to act the part and all of it. So, in church, going through these things, couldn't say nothing to anyone, right? And I had to carry everything inside of me. So, initially, to me, that was my cross that was carried on the inside.
That's the piece that I really wanted to be able to pull out, because I think that, as we go so fast and we talk about these experiences and we jump through to how you've come to your success, folks need to understand that there's a period in between. And particularly the piece that we're talking about, when you talk about being in church and being hurt, for some people it's like they can't understand it, because you're in church singing hallelujah and you're wearing your good clothes and everything looks good on the outside. I think we were talking about this today. But on the inside, you're hurt and crumbling, and we still carry those things on the inside. And then there is the expectations from church that if we just say, well, God's got it, that somehow we don't feel it. And that's not true. So talk to us about what it was like to carry that on the inside.
Carrying that on the inside. So after one attempted suicide, there began a build-up. And I just kept thinking, you know what, the only way of escape for me is just to end my life. And so I began to start really thinking more of how I could end my life. Still wish I could speak with someone, but couldn't. It's painful to try to rehash it,
Yeah.
but
And I appreciate you going there. Because there's that loss of trust.
yes.
There's not being able to believe in people who should have kept you safe and were there to protect you.
That too.
And then that desperation where you feel like you don't have anywhere else to go or anywhere
Or
else
anyone
to turn to.
Yeah. That's the hardest parts that I've had to deal with. Keeping everything on the inside of me.
And smiling on the outside.
And smiling on the outside, and little let people know literally the hell that you're going through. The torments. And it's not only sexual abuse. I didn't say it was also physical abuse.
Yes.
Physical abuse. Weather the storms and that, not to revert from what you were saying, but to date I still have scars on my body. My 2 legs were beat. Both of my legs. So imagine having to deal with all these things and no outlets. And as I mentioned, I thank you. Got saved at 11. But was I really saved? I mean, having all these thoughts in my mind. My thoughts were impure and just so hateful. And again, I'd smile, but then,
So I'm going to stop you for a second.
Ah.
I'm going to stop you for a second there because I do think this is a place where people struggle, right? Were you saved at 11? Absolutely.
no,
Absolutely. When you gave your life to Jesus at that moment, you were saved, right? That doesn't exempt us from pain or hurt or negative thoughts. Otherwise, there'd be no reason in the Bible for it to talk about the need to transform our minds, right?
Yes.
That's in the Bible. So, yes, you were saved, but that doesn't exempt you from the pain and the hurt of the abuse that occurred to you over the years.
Right.
So it's not, because I think sometimes, or like, this is what I'm talking about, there's this, a spiritual way of thinking which is like, well, if I was better spiritually, I wouldn't be in this position, or I wouldn't think this way, or I wouldn't hurt this way. And that's not the case.
Right.
That's not the case. I mean, the devil's always throwing thoughts in our minds.
Yeah.
All the time, right? Doesn't matter how
Yeah,
spiritually
yeah.
equipped you are, he's always like throwing things in your mind. Now what we choose to take on and carry, I think that's it from there. So I really, if anything I could give you right now would be to like move away from that and then help me understand what you did step by step that put you towards your journey of success. Because at that point, you could have actually walked away hating the church, right? Because feeling like it's very phony if it's not working for you.
Mhm.
But how did you move forward?
Well, as I mentioned before, I really never had that kind of relationship with the Lord when I was younger. I honestly, quote unquote, got saved because, you know,
Mhm.
back in the days, you talk about going to hell and all that, so
Mhm.
I ran and got baptized, but I didn't give him 100% of me, I just did give him a part of me out of fear.
Mm.
But as I journeyed and all these things started to happen, I had to realize that I needed a friend. And that friend was the Lord. I know at that point, I understood at that point in my 30s, 40s, that the friend that I really needed was Jesus. Because he's the only friend that will stick closer than a brother. People say they're your friends, but
Yeah.
wait until something happens,
Yeah.
right? They betray you. But then his friends betray him. So I had to really get down deep and develop a relationship with him.
Mm.
I love to this day I do it. I would just go in his presence and just start bawling before him. And I dance. I love to dance before the Lord. If you see me do my hand gestures, because I love to dance before him. And he just started speaking to me. He started giving me more dreams and visions and let me know through his words that I'm with you. So over time, having acquired all of that knowledge, I realized he's for real. He really, really is my friend. He really is not only my friend, but my confidence, someone I could go to the person that I could go to and tell things that I couldn't tell anyone else. And so the relationship between me and the Lord really started developing. And the burden to help other women became more stronger and stronger. And so, when the signs, I thought I heard a preaching one time say, follow your instincts.
Mm.
So the instincts just became more and more clear. Sometimes I would pass by a woman and something hit me like a weight of burden, or I would just look at the person and I could say, something's wrong, this person's hurting. And I would go to the person and start talking and get stuff out of them. And then I realized that it's the same thing I went through. Maybe she didn't have someone to speak to. But I allowed my ear to be that kind of ear. To listen. If anything I know, I have a listening skill. I will listen. I love to listen. And then after I listen, I'd say, let's go to the Word of God, because that's where I found my comfort. This is what I did to get to this step in the stage in my life. No one else would have done it.
So it really was about deepening
It
that
was.
relationship with him.
Yes.
And so take me back a little bit. When you started restoring broken vessels, how many years ago?
I started back in 2007. Actually, I was working for a previous company, Dress for Success, and before that they downsized, but prior to them downsizing, 3 of the board members just saw my passion in all this for women, and they decided that they're gonna really helped me to start this. It's a ministry, so to start this ministry. So these 3 women, they used their own money. They funded everything from start to finish. They got, the only thing I don't think I had was a website at the time, but everything else from start to finish, including the website, they helped me to do this. And I was.
And what were you
going
doing
around.
during that time?
So I
What
was
kind of work
going-
were you doing?
Okay, so you mean with the company?
No, with Restoring Broken
So
Vessels.
I was hosting conferences.
Okay.
You know, just going around in workshops and conferences and just reaching out to women about restoring broken vessels, the benefits of healing. Because if you're not healed, you'll go through the rest of your life, take it to your grave, just so calculating, harsh. I say wicked because the Bible just says the heart is desperately wicked, and who can know it but God? Because you could be smiling, as we said, right? But in your heart you're just so wicked because you want to kill somebody or something like that. So I was able to help a few women at the time, and then not knowing what to do. So this is where the business aspect came in. Not knowing, because after they started the business, they went their own ways. I didn't know anything else. I was kind of lost. And so I was just putting in all of my money, all of my time, everything into Restoring Broken Vessels.
So I'm gonna pull back again because I don't want you to gloss over that either. So there are challenges whether it's a for-profit business or a non-profit
It was a
business.
LLC.
They're both different types of business. They're just different types of business. And there are steps to managing and growing a business, whether it's for-profit or non-profit. What were you struggling with? What were your challenges around? You seem to have had a team that came around you, helped with finances to get you going off the ground.
Mhm.
You seem to be really good and capable of managing the conferences and the workshops. But when the team left, what was the challenge for you?
So the challenge for me was the finances, because the money that I had saved when the company downsized, I was pouring everything into, to get more conferences and workshops. Of course, I like to splurge with women, the goodie bags, the food and all of those things. And so I was just taking my savings out and putting in, and then that's when my house really went into foreclosure for the first time. My house went into several foreclosure for the first time. And I had to make a conscious decision that I need to draw the line with that. And so I dissolved the business.
Okay, so I'm gonna pull you back again because this is a common thing that we see, and particularly in black-owned businesses, whether they're for-profit or non-profit.
Mm-hmm.
It's all self-financed.
Right.
And so with lack of access to capital, it is a little different. You said it was an LLC before,
LLC.
so it wasn't a for-profit
Mhm.
model,
Mhm.
right? The model for how you grow your business is you have a service or a product that you sell, but you are very much running it like a nonprofit, as if, look what, donations? How were you expecting money to come in,
Right.
donations to come in?
Donations.
Right, so
Yeah.
the model wasn't
Mm-hmm.
right? So then you just keep kind of sinking your own finances into it to the point where it puts you in jeopardy. It puts you in jeopardy. What do you regret? Do you regret anything about that piece?
Well, yeah. It's regret, but it's also lessons, you know. You have to, the Bible says, people perish for lack of knowledge, and just not having the knowledge, I just thought I could run with it. They left, they set me up and they left. Now I was able to do that, but I wasn't really charging for anything. So I'm giving out, and some people are built like that. They really don't have the capacity to receive, and I believe I was one of those persons where I would just dish it. I don't want nothing back, but now I'm understanding you have to expect something when you give out. Maybe not from the same person, but you have to expect to receive stuff in order to, if you have a business or whatever you're doing, in order to continue the trend.
Absolutely.
You can't just say, okay, be naive, and that's what I was doing.
I mean, you had a business and you were providing a service and then giving it away for free. So that is a classic case of that's not going to grow.
It's not.
Right, it's not going to grow. So you've learned from that. And now it's been how many years in between and you've just restarted?
I can't even my brain is, but I think it was 2007 or 8. And then actually here's where you came into play, because we've been friends for several years, and then we have a habit of just disappearing from each other's lives and then coming back in again. And in 2000, it was when COVID hit. 2020?
Yeah.
2020, when COVID hit, I kept thinking about you. So where could Anne be? Because I have not been seeing her, speaking to her. And then maybe I thought you went to fruition because you just came out of nowhere into my life once again. And you introduced me on Zoom to a gentleman called Pedro Adele, and we used to just be gung-ho to listen to, and he really did help. He educated us a lot in terms of not only business, money, God, and relationships and all that. So at that point, I believe that was my turning point where God was saying, I want you to pick up this thing again and run with it. And you really helped me along the way. I know I rub you in the wrong places a lot of times, and I'm just being honest, but I'm thankful for your patience, because if God has given you the ability beyond disability to be patient with people, because you see the ability that sometimes I don't even see, and you take the time out of your busy schedule to make sure that might not get to the level where I'm supposed to be, but at least a mile at a time. I'm not going to say 10 miles at a time, but a mile at a time. Some people don't do it quickly like others, and I know I'm one of them, right? I'm not pronouncing no doom and gloom on myself, but I know how I am. And so at that point, little by little, we began to do things on Facebook. With the help of Pedro, I met this gentleman from the Philippines, Joe. And Joe was instrumental to having me start some, I believe it was challenges, Facebook challenges, 5-day challenge, 21-day challenges. And Joe took time out and sent out some mass emails. And he told me he got over 100 responses. He had to turn people away.
Wow.
And that was how Restoring Broken Vessels came back into fruition. And little by little, it's been 2020, it's been 4 years later. And the steps have been small, not giant steps, but here I am back in place again. But this time, the Bible says, teach me to number my days that I may apply wisdom. I don't know how much time God has left for me. So I want to make sure that I leave this legacy of Restoring Broken Vessels, that when I go, someone can continue the trend. Most recently, because of what happened, back to the abusiveness, what happened to me in 2000 and, when I was in my 40s, early 40s, it happened to me again with a pastor of a certain church I was attending. And so I became victim of that abuse once again. It was not a forced thing, but then I got deep into the situation, and I'm just being open because I was groomed. I was honestly groomed by this person. And because of that, I gave myself to this man. After the fact, I realized I'm in my 40s. How could this happen? That's when the Lord said to me, now, I allowed this to happen. He said, I allowed it to happen to you. Now I want you to go into the churches and reach out for those older women. Go back to the story of Tamar. I don't know how many people know the story of Tamar. Lustful brother wanted the woman, got her. When he got her, you realize, what was I doing? But the woman was the one who suffered the most consequences. Although the man lost his life, this woman stayed in her father's house desolate for the rest of her life. The Lord was saying to me, there are so many women up in the church houses, just like Tamar. Those are the ones I'm sending you for. I allowed this to happen because you could not tell them if you had not walked in their shoes. The manipulation, the lies, all of those things came into play. So when I first rehashed Restoring Broken Vessels, I was putting it out to churches. And yes, I went into 3 different churches, starting from Bridgeport to New Haven. The first church I went to, when I started speaking, you could literally hear a pin drop. So I realized, I looked around at the older women in the church and I said, something happened. I kind of put it on hold and just kind of went after the younger population. But I believe that's when the Lord said, okay, I'm going to make it so hard for you that you have to dissolve the business, but that's not the way I want you to go.
So listen a second, because I'm stopping you because I'm trying to pull out the business lessons so that somebody who's listening to the podcast gets to take away something that they can learn from this, right? So you already had to fold the nonprofit earlier and that was around learning the skills around financial management and how to charge the correct amount for your services and those kinds of things. You're rebuilding around 2000, and I remember the challenges that you were doing online, and a lot of the work that you were doing on Facebook Live and things like that, and people were being drawn to you. But you also had a particular target market that you've been called to reach, but for some reason, you keep trying to go over here when you've been told to be over here. So, you know, I know we've only got a few minutes left, but talk about when you're not going to be in the space that you are born to be in, that you are gifted to be in, what happens?
Well, everything you do does not come into fruition. You know, it's null and void because that's not the way, the route you are supposed to go. So I'm finding now, even though it's hard for me to really talk about what happened, I'm just going to have to be open, because this is the one thing that really sticks in my mind. He told me one day when I was asking him why me? This is what he said to me. He said, Paul became all things so that he could win some.
Mm-hmm.
I became life for you. I laid my life down. I died so you could live. You are literally the scapegoat. You have to take the sins. And if you know anything about the scapegoat, he has to take the sins of the people and take it over. But you also are the epiphany. That's where the awakening comes in. Epiphany equals awakening. You are the epiphany of righteousness that women will look up to. Right. And be healed.
So in order for somebody to have an awakening or an epiphany, they really do have to see that light that stands up in the darkness, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you avoid being the light, you're stopping somebody else from being able to live their dream. Mm-hmm. So I know you've overcome that now, and you've shifted your target marketing in your business, and as we're beginning to grow, you're growing, restoring broken vessels now. You just had a conference that was very successful a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. I know you have some other things planned over the next year. If you had to just in a few words say, what have you learned to move forward to make this next level of your business better than it was the last time? What are the top two things you would say?
Well, firstly, when you have a mandate, that you don't go around in circles. Yeah. You have to go the direction that you're being pointed. You can't miss the mark. That's the first thing. The second thing, and I think this is the most important thing, is the spiritual aspect of it. You have to be willing to change, not other people, but yourself. First, yeah. Change has to come from the innermost being of yourself. You cannot change others if you yourself, if you are not changed. I had to be the change, as you said, you're the scapegoat. So I have to be the change that others are looking for. So in essence, I believe what he was saying to me in a nutshell is, you are a replica of me. If you don't change your song and dance, then see, the whole world sings was on him, right? He had to do something so we could be free. I have to do something so those women can be free.
And change is an ongoing process. It's not something that just happens instantly and all of a sudden you're healed, you can move forward, right? It's an ongoing process. So what is the next step for you in your journey in terms of change?
My personal self? Mm-hmm. I have to be open to the voice of the Lord and whatever he says to me, because I can't change myself, none of us can. Be willing to listen, and not only listen, but faith comes by hearing, obey, move when he says move, most importantly, because we were talking earlier, you could miss it. I don't want to miss it because of all the souls that are attached to me. I don't want to miss it. At the end of the day, when I stand before him, I want to hear, well done, not depart from me. See those souls? They're there.
So if we think about what Restoring Broken Vessels is about, what's the key message that restoring, what brings it home that makes Restoring Broken Vessels what it is as an organization?
It's a tough one to answer. You said think before I speak. What makes it? Repeat what you said.
What is the mission, vision
The
of
mission.
Restoring Broken Vessels? Let me put it that way.
Okay, that's better, thank you. To help women to realize their purpose after abuse, that life don't have to be the way they see it. God requires change. And if they want to be whole once again, but now they're broken, they must open themselves to obeying what He's saying to them to bring forth a change so they can walk in newness.
Thank you. I think that walking in newness is the key piece, and dropping those masks and that imposter syndrome and all those other things that a lot of women carry, not just in the church. I think that's a key thing to bring home. So I know our time is out, and I wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you so
It's
much.
been a pleasure. You can reach Marjorie at restoringbrokenvessels.org.
RestoringBrokenVesselsInc.org. Or right now, temporary number is 475-224-9270. Or you can reach me email, restoringbrokenvessels, rbvessels08@gmail.com. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you as well.